Denver is closing 3 of its 4 hotel shelters for migrants this week, as next video of the city moving migrants along becomes national news. A closer look at how much Denver is spending to house people who had been living on the streets.
We have no real idea how much money is being spent.
We went line by line through the spending and found tens of millions of dollars approved beyond what the public's been told. If Colorado allows you to have a digital ID on your phone, is it a good idea to hand it over to a police officer?
It makes sense if you don't think through all the potential unintended consequences.
Neither snow nor rain nor pounding grapple can stop Next from delivering the news. But let's hear it for this dude sticking it out during the interview. Tonight on Next. Half of Denver's remaining hotel shelters for migrants will close today. That leaves the city with 2. And one of those will close by the end of the week. Denver's been making an aggressive push lately to get newly arrived migrants to leave town and to get those who stay into housing. We've got a never-before-seen look at the process playing out in this video from inside a city shelter. It's the city's point person for communicating with migrants, telling them that jobs and resources are taken here, so they should go elsewhere. This video from Next is making national news today. There has been a drop-off in arrivals since last month, and that, together with the city's push to scale back services, has taken a migrant shelter population of 5,000 people at the beginning of the year down to about 700 people now. Denver's offering migrants who are arriving a bus ticket to anywhere else they want to go.
Nueva York te da más, Chicago te da más, entonces sugiero que vaya por allá, donde hasta también con un albergue de más largo plazo. Si permanecen aquí, te vas a sufrir hasta más, y eso no lo quiero ver.
The city has said it estimates that it'll spend $120 million on migrant services this year, money that will need to be cut or moved elsewhere in the budget. As Denver struggles to find funding for that migrant crisis, Mayor Mike Johnston's administration continues to expand his top priority, his initiative to end homelessness. This week, City Council will finally find out just how much this is costing taxpayers. Our Mark Salinger found that the anti-homeless initiative has already been approved to spend tens of millions of dollars beyond what the public has been told.
Solving homelessness isn't easy. Finding out exactly how much it costs isn't either.
We know the strategy works. We know how to pay for it. And we know how to do it within our existing resources.
In September of last year, Mayor Mike Johnston held 2 press conferences on the city budget, focusing on homelessness.
This total cost is about $48 million.
The following year would be even cheaper, he said.
We've laid out a $39 million budget.
A total of $87.8 million budgeted over 2 years. But documents show Denver City Council has already approved up to $111 million in expenditures. That's up to $23 million more than the mayor said it would cost. More than $65 million approved to buy or lease hotels that the city has converted into shelters. More than $30 million approved to providers like the Salvation Army to run the shelters.
He's asking us to share in this sacrifice, this financial sacrifice. But on the other hand, he is spending as if we are not in a so-called budget crisis.
Dr. Lisa Calderon is a former mayoral candidate who ran against Johnston, gave him a tepid endorsement in the runoff, and has since become a strong critic of the mayor. She asked why the spending hasn't stopped for the mayor's initiative while budget cuts begin everywhere else.
We have no real idea how much money is being spent. We know what city council says is being spent. We hear the press conferences from the mayor, but we don't see all of the things that are not openly discussed.
At least one city council member, Stacey Gilmore, told us she's asked for months for a budget breakdown of House 1000 and still doesn't know how much it costs. The mayor's office told us today actual spending in 2023 was around $10 million. Most of the expenditures were pushed to this year. We still don't know the exact cost of all the bills that will come in.
I don't think he should get a pass anymore, that just because he says something costs a certain amount, that is true. He needs to prove it.
We asked for a full list and breakdown of the budget for House 1000, but did not get that. So we came up with those budget projections that you just saw there by going through more than 6 months of city council documents to try and match up the receipts to what Johnston has said publicly. That means that what we found is not an exhaustive list. However, the mayor's office points out that when city council approves money, it doesn't always mean that all of that money is actually spent. This Wednesday, Kyle, city council will, in theory, get a full breakdown of where the spending is going.
And we've heard frustration from council about what numbers that they're seeing. That's the reason why you went through actually looking for the receipts. And what you're also learning is that sometimes the mayor will present money as this is being spent in this year, but it's actually kind of being trickled across a couple of years.
So you look at what was actually spent, what the mayor's office says was actual spending in 2023, $10.3 million. That's not a lot. You look at what one of the hotels cost. That was $18.9 million just to buy. How are they spending that? It could be over years, several years, that it goes on the budget. That means that we don't see it until next year. For a lot of these expenditures, it's not like they're spending it just at once. It'll be over several years.
Yeah. Goes without saying, doing something that no major American city has ever successfully done before, ending homelessness, will be expensive, but people should know what it costs.
It's difficult to keep track of.
Yeah. Mark, thank you. Democrats at the state capitol want to ask Coloradans permission for one of America's first state-level taxes on guns and ammo. They plan to use that money to support victims of violent crime. A proposal being debated in committee right now would add an 11% excise tax on firearms and ammunition, and then use that revenue to fund crime victim services around the state. The bill's Democratic sponsors don't like to have it described as gun control. They see it as a way to bring in revenue for victim services once federal pandemic funding ends. Conservatives said that this tax will be too much of a burden on gun store owners and customers, pointing to the fact that they're already paying local sales taxes and an existing federal excise tax on gun sales. The bill does exempt small gun shops from paying that monthly tax, or that tax rather, if their monthly sales fall below $2,000. So, as we have reported here, and a new study now reinforces, some of Colorado's gun control laws just don't get enforced or really used in conservative areas of the state. Researchers with CU's Firearms Injury Prevention Initiative studied enforcement of the red flag law, which passed in 2020. The law allows police, family members, and people living under one roof to ask a court to take guns away from somebody that is deemed to be a threat to themselves or others. Since this was passed, judges statewide have approved about 2/3 of the red flag applications. CU's study shows that the approval rates were much lower, about 48%, in the 37 counties where conservative leaders have opposed the red flag law. In other counties, judges approved about 77%.
It's one of these ideas that I think honors the viewpoints of the firearm advocacy community while also trying to do what's best in situations where there's crisis.
That law was updated last year to expand the list of people who could request a red flag order. It now includes educators and district attorneys. Should note, only a few cases have since been filed by people in those newer groups. You think about how much of our lives are digital these days, but you still have to dig out a physical ID to prove your age or your identity or your ability to drive. State legislators are moving forward with a bill that would make it legal to use your phone to show a digital ID whenever it's requested. But before you hand your phone to a police officer, consider this from our Marshall Zellinger.
Colorado IDs have transformed. 2 years ago, the state unveiled this new design for licenses and IDs. It also looks like this through the My Colorado app. This is my digital ID, with my personal information removed for TV purposes. And state lawmakers are currently working on adding this to the list of legitimate ways to identify yourself with law enforcement while driving.
So it makes sense if you don't think through all the potential unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences are why we went to DU law professor Ian Farrell, wondering if law enforcement could look at more than just my ID if I hand over my phone to prove who I am.
Whether handing the officer your phone for these purposes counts as consent is kind of unclear. If I was a judge, I would say, no, you are handing it over for a fairly clear purpose.
We can't go past the screen that you're showing us your ID or insurance with.
Colonel Matthew Packard is the head of Colorado State Patrol, which asks for IDs often.
While I'm not giving consent handing my phone over for ID purposes, it may not matter if something happens while my phone is in possession of law enforcement, like an untimely text message.
Just like the law is currently, if I see evidence of a crime that's inside the vehicle as I'm standing at the door, the same principle would play here. If I'm looking at your phone to get your ID and all of a sudden a message shows up about the load of cocaine in the trunk, then we're going to do some further investigation.
There's this doctrine in Fourth Amendment law called plain view. If the officer is allowed to be holding your phone or even looking at your phone and something pops up, that is not them searching the phone. They're perfectly entitled to use that information.
Farrell's concern is more about what happens when law enforcement has your phone and then tries to initiate a search which first requires your consent.
Once the officer has your phone, and says, do you mind if I search, or what's the password, it is even more difficult to feel comfortable denying that request than had you not given the officer your phone in the first place.
It is still not a legitimate form of ID in Colorado to have your digital ID as proof of a driver's license. And the bill that caught my eye about this is only making it a legitimate use of ID to prove who you are, not to prove that you can drive in the state. If you refuse to identify yourself to law enforcement, digital or otherwise, this bill going through the legislature would allow law enforcement to take you into custody for the purposes of figuring out who you are and then releasing you or arresting you because of some outstanding warrant, which is probably why you weren't saying who you were in the first place.
Yeah. One, Marshall's back, everybody. Marshall's back. You've been asking for weeks. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you.
Two, I feel like my takeaway from this is like, digital ID officer? Yes, sure, no problem. Airplane mode? There you go.
I'm still old-fashioned. I'll go manual.
Yeah.
Let me dig into my wallet. Hey, give me a second. Here's the actual paper thing or whatever it's made out of.
Yeah, some plastic. All right. Welcome back, my friend.
Thanks.
You all just came through in a huge way for the nonprofit that runs mobile shower and laundry trucks all around the metro area. They allow people to experience the dignity and the fresh start that comes with having clean clothes and a shower. It's the kind of thing that helps people find jobs and helps people keep their jobs. You raised $30,000 last week for Bayard Enterprises' mobile shower and laundry program. And your Word of Thanks Fund monthly gifts, they're likely to meet another $15,000 on top of that, and every cause we featured last month. One micro-giving donation after another, you have raised $12 million and counting to help the nonprofits helping Colorado. If you know of a nonprofit that's making a real impact, email me next@9news.com. A dark money group funneling millions to conservative causes in Colorado is ordered by a court to identify its donors. And as the governor celebrates Colorado's new e-bike rebates, we crash the party with some uncomfy questions about whether small businesses are being forced to bear the cost. There are powerful groups that try to influence how Colorado works for all of us, and often those groups like to remain anonymous, at least the people writing the checks for all that influence. Now, a prominent conservative dark money group is being ordered to identify its donors. The nonprofit called Unite for Colorado spent a collective $4 million supporting conservative-backed ballot initiatives in 2020. The Office of Democratic Secretary of State Jenna Griswold demanded that the group disclose its donors and pay a $40,000 fine. But Unite for Colorado argued it didn't have to abide by those rules because the state constitution only requires groups to register as a political issue committee if their major purpose is to support ballot initiatives. District Court judge sided with the group last year, said that they had to consider the group's spending on individual ballot questions, not their spending as a whole. An appeals court ruled the opposite today, upholding Griswold's decision, ordered the dark money group to identify who gives it money. Chris Bianchi's along now with a look at the weather, and not the hail that we got today. I don't want to say hail. I'm going to get in trouble with the big weather minds. The grapple that we got today.
Look at you, Kyle.
Grapple.
You can stand here in front of the green screen if you keep this up with this. Grapple versus hail. So I'm going to explain the differences between grapple and hail. First of all, here's kind of an up-close view about what grapple is. It kind of looks a little slushy, kind of like Dippin' Dots ice cream, right? That's the kind of look to it. So it's that kind of soft, slushy sort of hail. If you ever see that, that's usually your sign that we're talking about grapple. Fun fact, we are very prone to getting a lot of grapple here in the Denver area and throughout eastern Colorado because of our elevation. So I'm going to step out of the way and explain the difference between hail and grapple. They form in completely different ways. Hail comes usually from thunderstorms. Grapple is a snowflake that falls and then it runs into what is called supercooled water. What that is, it's just liquid that's in temperatures below freezing. So think of a Tootsie Pop and the middle, the chocolate part, that is your snowflake, and then around it, that is your ice. And that's essentially how grapple forms. And it's usually small, slushy, doesn't really do anything other than kind of ding off your car top, things like that. So we're seeing a lot of that here in the Denver area. We've actually had some thunder grapple today. Not something you say every day, but we're seeing some rain, some grapple at times for us. And we'll see that over the next couple of hours. That'll probably flip over to snow in the next hour or two. Not looking at much in the way of accumulation except for the foothills. That's where we could get a few inches of snow for us up into some of the higher elevations above 7,000 feet. But then a ridge of high pressure builds on in, and that likely means we're going to be talking about finally our first 70-degree day of the year for us here in Denver. This is our latest wait for a 70-degree day for us in Denver since 1983, but it looks like Thursday or Friday we finally get to that 70-degree mark for us here in Denver, but not before a bit more grapple tonight.
I think fundamentally our retailers will benefit a lot because this is going to drive demand.
The governor defends the state's decision to have small businesses carry the cost of popular e-bike rebates until next year. And a word about the Rockies. Maybe a couple of words about the Rockies. Democratic Governor Jared Polis, an environmental advocate, celebrated the rollout of the state's new e-bike rebate today. Then that pesky Next team showed up to ask why small businesses are being forced to largely bear the cost of the program.
Starting today, you get $450 off right at your point of sale. That's a really big deal. It's a big deal in saving people money. It's a big deal in reducing emission and reducing traffic.
It's also a big deal for the small businesses that sell those bikes because participating retailers will have to cover the cost of the discount themselves until next year when they file for tax reimbursement. If they choose not to participate because they can't front all of that money, they could lose out on customers. We asked about that. The governor argued it's still worth it for them to participate because the state will give them an extra $50 for each rebate issued. And the state hopes to move to quarterly reimbursement for small businesses next year.
So effectively, we're paying $50 for the time and effort that goes into the rebate for the bike store owner. We are going to get those turnaround times to about 3 months starting next year. I think fundamentally our retailers will benefit a lot because this is going to drive demand.
The time, the effort, and again, the money that they are fronting for a year for the state program. There are 47 retailers participating in the program so far. The state hopes to include more soon. It's okay to be bad. Just don't be boring. That's what we aim for on this program. Bad is sometimes unavoidable. Boring is a choice. Some nights this show is going to be bad. I hope that it's never boring. Anyway, I got thinking about that bad and boring thing the other day because I was watching clips of the Rockies play. I don't recommend it if you can avoid it. And I've recently thought the same thing about the Broncos as they passed on one free agent quarterback after another. There is a good chance that both those teams will be bad this year. I'm at peace with that. I just don't want them to be boring. The Broncos are rebuilding, even if they won't use that word. The Rockies? Let's just say if the Rockies franchise were a pet, the owner would be cited for neglect and they'd get to go to a new home. But as the Broncos look for a new quarterback and the Rockies look for a new everything, I hope that they will consider just how forgiving Coloradans can be of a bad product. I mean, think about all the people watching this program. We just don't want to see boring. We're back with your feedback next. Feedback tonight from Ivan, who wrote in to mock the latest Word of Thanks microgiving project, the nonprofit that has mobile shower and laundry units that drive around the metro area for people to use. He says, $30,000 for bum showers. Give me a break, man. Here's what I would say, and here's what the folks who run this program say. The first step for somebody out of a situation in which they're hanging by a thread in life could be the hot shower, the ability to have clean clothes, right? It'd be tough to get a job or to keep a job without that. It'd be tough to go to school without embarrassment, without the ability to shower and have clean clothes. If you believe that people can improve where they are in life and succeed, that's a first step. He adds, your show sucks anyway.